Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Breakfast All Day. It's Christy, it's Alonzo, and it's time to talk spoilers for last weekend's smash massive biggest film of the last 2 years, Spider-Man No Way Home. If you don't want to hear those spoilers, if you haven't seen the movie yet, then go away now. Turn us off. Stop this thing. Stop this crazy thing, Jane, because we are going to get into it.
All right, you have 5 seconds to turn away if you don't want to listen or watch spoilers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are in this movie.
Oh my God.
As everyone knew. You know, what's so funny is that people are like, oh, the things that are spoilers I already knew. Like, I don't think I knew for sure. Like, I covered this business for a living. I don't think I knew for sure that they were in it. Did you?
I think they kept denying it, right? Wasn't that I try never to read this stuff, but I would see headlines of like Andrew Garfield says he's not. He doesn't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, they were trying to be cagey with that sort of thing.
But I love that they are in it. I love it because those are some of the most emotional and satisfying and just flat out entertaining parts of this film. When the three of them are all together and they're comparing notes on being Peter Parker and, you know, swapping war stories and Andrew Garfield is cracking Tobey Maguire's back, and just like the way that, like, you know, it's that thing where nobody else understands what you're going through, and you can sense that each of them had felt kind of lonely, and so to find each other is cool. It's just cool to see them again, and I like the way they have made Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker evolve, because part of the thing that set those films apart, for better and for worse, was that he was like angsty, chip on his shoulder Peter Parker, and now he has evolved since then to be more sensitive. He's been doing some work in the meantime, work on himself. Yeah. And the fact that he's able to save MJ in the exact way he couldn't save Gwen Stacy. Like, it's the exact same shot.
Yes. They take what could have just been a cutesy gimmick and actually provide some moments of emotional catharsis. I think is the smartest thing this movie does. I jokingly this week on Twitter posted the Flash of Two Worlds cover and said foundational text, because that's kind of where this idea started. DC Comics had the old Jay Garrick Flash, and then during their golden age they started the new Barry Allen Flash, and then they decided, how do we get both of these characters to coexist? And that's when DC began the whole thing of like parallel worlds and Earth 2 and Earth 3 and Earth S and Earth whatever, you know. And that is what we're now seeing play out in the Marvel movies with the multiverse. Strange that the DC TV series have been tackling this stuff already, but not the movies. But here with Marvel, we're cracking open the multiverse. We were getting hints at that from WandaVision, but now they're clearly like, here we go, this is it. And how better to do it than with Spider-Man, who has launched various successful franchises with different actors and slightly different backstories, but pretty much staying true to the whole thing.
I've seen this movie twice now. I saw it with you at a press screening, and then I took Nick to see it on the Thursday night that it opened at like 4:00. Very crowded theater full of high school kids. Everyone went ape shit when both of those other Peter Parkers came through. A lot of stuff. And also when Matt Murdock shows up.
Yes, I was saying early on, the other big spoiler, Matt Murdock is Peter Parker's lawyer at one point, and he catches a brick that comes through the window, and when Peter asks how he did that, he goes, I'm a very good lawyer. And it's Charlie Cox. So between you know, somebody had this on a calendar at Marvel Central. Charlie Cox gets introduced in Spider-Man No Way Home the same week that the Kingpin, played by Vincent D'Onofrio, gets introduced into Hawkeye, which means that the entire Netflix Marvel stuff is being woven into the sort of the main thread now of the MCU. So are we going to get Luke Cage or Jessica Jones? Who knows?
Plus today, the teaser trailer for the Doctor Strange sequel came out, which is essentially
the shawarma from No Way Home.
It's the second end credit scene. It's funny. You and I are walking out and you're like, was that a trailer? Because usually the end credit scenes are like cohesive, singular units, right? Like you got the one with Tom Hardy. So let's talk about the time frame with Tom Hardy with Venom, because Nick and I often try to figure out when things happen or how or where. So when Tom Hardy is in the bar in Mexico, is that him at the end of it? Is he getting blipped into Peter Parker's world because the Doctor Strange spell has gone wrong?
I think he's already there because the bartender is explaining to him like Thanos and all of this stuff. Like he's explaining the blip and a bunch of other stuff to him, which means he has just arrived into the
Peter Parker verse, the Tom Holland verse.
The Tom Holland verse. Thank you. Yes. So that's a tee up for him to now be in the next Tom Holland movie, I suppose.
Well, where does he go when he like gets all sparkly at the end and fades away?
I don't know. Here's the thing. I didn't see this. I still haven't seen the second Venom movie, so I'm not fully on board with where we are with the Venom verse. But yeah, the whole thing with the bartender is him explaining the Avengers to him. Which that's a great joke in the movie where the other Spider-Man is like, that's great. What's an Avenger?
Right. Is it a band? Are you in a band?
So obviously Tom Hardy and Venom are here now. Or Eddie Brock and Venom are within the Tom Holland world. I don't know what the very ending of that means, but I assume the idea is they're teeing up the fact that he will now exist in the mainstream Marvel universe.
And if you have the Tom Hardy Venom, do you also have the Topher Grace Venom?
I was wondering if he was going to come over because, that's the thing. Okay, we are unpacking spoilers now.
Let's do it.
The rules about who crosses over and who doesn't are a little fuzzy because you have all these supervillains who know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man showing up because of the messed up spell, and some of them who are dead in their own universe get plucked out at the moment right before dying to come and make trouble in this movie. So then why not Emma Stone and Kirsten Dunst?
Why not Rosemary Harris and Sally Field?
Exactly. Yes.
Why not Cliff Robertson?
Apparently, if you are not, I guess. Good point. I was about to say if you have to have a penis, but no, Cliff Robertson could totally.
The Uncles Ben could all return.
Absolutely. Yes. So I'm not quite, and I'm sure someone in the comments will let us know a little at length.
Please
how that works.
Enlighten us.
Yes. Be nice, but explain it to us because we don't get it.
Anyway, I had a really, really good time, but I also cried. I'm so shocked that I found that I was crying the first time, not the second time, when Peter is saying goodbye to MJ and Ned. Like the idea that they're not going to remember him. Zendaya is so strong in the scene, and you really deeply feel that chemistry with her and Tom Holland. Just the idea that like, although it's been hell, it's also been a lot of fun, and they're all going to forget that, and that's really sad.
I've seen people compare that to the end of Warren Beatty's Heaven Can Wait.
Oh,
where he and Julie Christie no longer know who each other are, but maybe we'll wind up re-meeting anyway. That's a moving moment. And then, I mean, the death of Aunt May is pretty heavy in this movie because, and for all the people who wondered why nobody said with great power comes great responsibility in the Tom Holland movies, they were saving it. And they use it in a way that gives it some real emotional impact in that she is saying it as one of her dying words as this thing to impart to him. So that works really well. That's really moving, I think.
And she's so great. I love the energy she's brought to that role.
She is, absolutely. I will say I don't entirely buy this movie's concept of like fixing supervillains.
Okay,
like
let's talk about that.
I like it as a general theory. Like, what if instead of just killing these people or like beating them to a standstill or throwing them in jail, we actually like cure them? I don't know. I feel like that's a bigger issue that this movie isn't ready. That this movie isn't ready to bite off yet. Like that to me calls into. There are such sort of philosophical issues which we've seen addressed in the comics where you get superheroes with sort of delusions of grandeur, like, well, we'll just sort of brainwash everybody into not being villains and then society will be perfect. And it's like, well, that's great, but where's our free will in all this? I feel like if you're going to get into that territory, you have to really lay down a lot of groundwork, and they kind of rush us into that notion here.
I mean, given how upbeat this incarnation of Peter Parker is, I guess it makes sense that he would be that kind of optimist. It's consistent that he would feel like, well, we can't just let them die. Why can't we help these people? I think he takes that element of being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, quite to heart. And so like when you're dealing with Green Goblin, for example, it appears that he is suffering from mental illness.
Yes.
Perhaps he is schizophrenic, or there's some kind of multiple personality thing going on with him where he's hearing a voice telling him to do awful things. And so the idea of fixing him isn't maybe it's not so simple as like shoving a thing in his neck.
Right.
But that's ultimately what fixes him.
Yes. Right. And again, I don't know. I respect this notion in theory, but I feel like it comes into such complex issues about things like free will, about mental illness, about like if you can fix these people that quickly, then it in a way undermines what makes them interesting and complex in the first place. If you can press a button and Otto Octavius is now like a straight ahead Joe and not like
he's a scientist
and not a megalomaniac, it's kind of like, well, then all right, I guess he's fixed now. I don't know.
How are you going to fix Kingpin? He's a crime boss.
Exactly. Yes, that's a very complicated psyche there. So yeah, so I don't know. I just that notion I feel like the movie is a little cavalier about, but more for the most part they make it work.
I was impressed by the speedy kind of spry nature with which John Watts juggles all of this. Because you've got all these characters coming in from all these different universes. You've got to nail the comedy. You've got to nail the action sequences. I would say just the action's really fun for the most part. The mirror dimension stuff is cool as shit. But the big climactic thing where they're all coming at him at the Statue of Liberty with the shield, it was hard for me to follow the first time as to which Spidey was which. You had to really look at the details on the suit.
I was going to say, I think that for the most part, that scene handles really well, given the number of villains involved and the number of players, and always being clear about who's where and what they're hanging from. But you're right, the three Spider-Man costumes are so similar that I would have liked, like a little a name on the back like they have in football, something to sort of differentiate them. That I grant you that could have been handled a little better.
My favorite line of the whole movie is, "So you're going to go dressed as a cool youth pastor or what?" Like I laughed out loud at that line. There are so many funny lines in this movie, but that was my favorite.
Yes.
What was your favorite part of the movie?
Well, look, I love the Doctor Strange MC Escher Manhattan, where everything kind of turns onto itself and in a kaleidoscope. So I'm always happy to see that back. I think what makes, and we talked about this in the review, I think what makes the Spider-Man movies unique among Marvel films or superhero movies in general is that they're ultimately these teen movies, and they're about recognizable, relatable teen stuff that happens to be taking place against the backdrop of these giant earth-shattering events. Peter Parker is not a millionaire industrialist. He is not a Norse god. He's a kid from Queens. And so I think that his relationships with MJ and with Ned really anchor that into a very human place. And ultimately that's what makes the losses more moving, and it makes the triumphs more exciting. So on that level, I think that's what these movies, and this movie specifically, does real well.
I also appreciated how they incorporate the Rogers the musical in the background. I didn't notice it the first time. The second time I noticed it when MJ and Peter are swooping through New York after the revelation. You see the billboards all over the place. So that was really cute. So that's all folded in too. Everything's all interconnected.
Oh yeah. And that's what a lot of the audience is here for. So, and as we said before, like, it's not that Easter eggs themselves are a bad thing. They're just not a substitute for drama and character. And this movie gives you all of the things.
Yes.
All right.
That's good. We've spoiled it sufficiently.
Exactly. So take that to the bank. If you have your own thoughts, please, I'm sure you'll be leaving them in the comments. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Y'all, this is our last show of 2021. It's been a shit year for everybody, but we super appreciate all of you who keep coming back and interacting with us, and all of our wonderful Patreon subscribers, everybody who's out there watching the show. Thank you for being there with us, and we look forward to being there for you next year. So have a great holiday season, everybody. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we will see you next time.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Thanks to all you guys for everything. Bye.
Woo! Bye.